My name's Kathy Garza. I work at the Haas School of Business, and I'm here this morning to volunteer and introduce Mary Radu, who is leading the Live Smart After 50. So if you are thinking you're in the mindfulness class, that's down the road. We're here for the Live Smart After 50 session. Mary is a certified life coach and founder of Pathmaker Coaching. For 14 years, Mary has helped midlife individuals and couples make work and lifestyle changes that energize them to live their best lives, aligned with their values, skills, and passions. Her professional transitions led her through 28 years in human services, manufacturing, healthcare, and information technology. In her Encore career, she shares what she's learned about career and lifestyle changes, divorce, and caring for aged parents with her midlife clients. Mary holds an MS and MSW from Case Western Reserve University. Welcome, Mary.
Great. Thanks, Kathy. It's great to be here today, and it's great to find a number of us who are sort of the same generation who showed up. I want to let you know that I will be drawing strongly from this book, Live Smart After 50, which the subtitle is The Expert's Guide to Life Planning for Uncertain Times. And I think we could all agree that that describes the environment around us today. I'm going to be drawing from one chapter in particular, but I'll also be talking about some of the other chapters. This book was written by a collaboration of 33 professionals in life planning, lots of different fields, who donated over 1,000 hours to develop this book as a tool for people out in the community like you, who are finding that after the recession of 2008, things have really changed for a lot of us, and we wanted to address some of the issues that we thought were relevant for people who are in their second half of life in today's age, the 21st century. In this chapter that I'll be drawing from, Work That Works for You, it was written by a team of career coaches and life planners who focus on generally the 50-plus population, and they were addressing issues that we believe are really relevant to all of us today as we look at the changes that we have in our work and where we're going in our later years when we're looking at what we might have called in the past retirement, which is not really, I don't think is that relevant a word these days. So we'll talk more about that later. I'm going to be taking you through an 8-step process that I believe will be helpful to you. And as we go through that, I'll suggest that you look at what you've already done and acknowledge yourself for that, and look at what you still need to do in order to address the work issue that you see yourself in today or have coming up in the near future. So I want to first of all start by asking you, what's the main concern that brought you to this conference and to this session? I want to get some of those concerns out on the floor and see where this group's at. What are your concerns? What brought you here?
I have some relevance. I mean, because, you know.
We're mic'd. I mean, we're being recorded.
I'm sorry. I think relevance. When I saw that after 50, things are different. You know, when I look at the performance evaluation and my boss is asking me what my goals are, retirement. I'll be honest with you, 2 more years. So, I mean, I'm just, so I'm not going to run at the same pace that I've been running for the last 30 years here. You know, taking on, and I'm watching all these changes. I keep seeing more being piled, but I don't see no dollar signs. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, great, thank you. Who else? What else brought you here today? Over here? Let's get the mic. We'll get a mic over to you.
I'm just looking for ideas.
Great.
It's not a problem. I'm on a trajectory, and it's been a great ride, and I am certainly well over that number. But you know, there must be some wonderful ideas out there that I haven't seen or come across yet. And when I do leave here, I want to have lots of fun and some really interesting things ahead of me. So.
Great.
Ideas.
Great, thank you. So looking for new input, new ideas.
Oh, and for me, you know, you look towards the date of retirement and people will say, is it 2 or 5 or, you know, how are you calculating everything? But I'm thinking it's what does happen when you leave Cal, but what are the opportunities? How do you
Right.
reinvent yourself or
Right.
take on another career? Because we're not done until we're 102, so.
You're speaking to the choir here.
Okay.
I'm totally with you. Great. One over here, the last table.
I'm going to get my steps in.
I'm looking for a framework of how to think ahead. I think in my life, I've sort of, well, you go to school and then you get a job, and I don't have a framework for after this. I know that I have losses I have to face ahead. I still have parents, and they're not going to be around forever. I have other people in my life who are going to be less present. I need a framework for how to think about and shape what I want.
Great. You just gave the advertisement for the class. Thank you. Great. One more, and then we'll go on.
Thank you. I think I feel a lot of anxiety because not only is Berkeley changing so much from when I started work here, that the Bay Area is changing so much, the country's, I mean, it's really a scary time for me to be not old enough to retire. I don't know if I can hang in that much more to benefit like I could because it's changed so much and it's taken too much out of me, to be frank, and I don't want to live like that. I want to start living now. I'm not going to wait till, that's how I feel. Like I'm kind of defiant. Like I don't want to wait until the bitter end and rock on a porch. I want to use the last whatever I have to do something and to do something different. So I'm looking for feedback like that too, and for like-minded people.
Great.
Like, what do we do now?
Great. Well, thank you. I think that we've got a good representation of the kinds of issues that people like us at this age have, and it's good to get these on the table. I'll be addressing much of what you've talked about in this presentation today. So I want to start by building a context for you around work and the concept of work, and then we're going to go into that 8-step process. So work is a part of your life journey, and I would guess that each of you would say it's a huge part of your life journey. Would you agree? Okay. So, and as Ursula Le Guin says, it's good to have an end to journey toward, but it's the journey that matters in the end. I want to tell you a little bit about my journey, and as I do that, I want you to look for some of the skills and some of the concepts that you think are relevant for you, okay? I started my career after getting a master's degree in Cleveland and moved all the way to California, yay! And started working in the field of human services planning for 5 years. And after a while, I started realizing that I did not have the temperament to deal with politics involved in planning human services, social services. And I didn't have the passion that I saw other people had. So I realized I need to make a change. And I started looking around, and I found an opportunity in my community working at a Fortune 100 company. I lived on the San Francisco Peninsula. And so for the next 11 years, I ended up working in material science, a big company that gave me opportunities to learn a lot. I started out in business planning. I took a little skill that I had connected to the new computer field, and I was collecting information off of Stanford's computer. And I got hired because I was willing to learn how to use the first Apple Lisa and do spreadsheets. So I got hired in business planning, and out of that I moved into production and material planning, which had more computer stuff, but a lot of people stuff that came from my past. And I did a lot of writing procedures and policies and training people, and then I got involved more in computer systems and moving from mainframe to local area networks, all that new stuff that was happening. I was learning a lot, and I was willing to try things. And I finally, eventually, ended up in an operations management job after putting together the first Apple PC network for this big company, their largest division. I learned a lot, I made okay money, and I always felt like I was a round peg in a square hole. I was working for manufacturing companies that valued engineers. So I started looking again for what could I do and what would be closer to my heart. What did I care about? And I ended up finding out about a company at a job fair, and it was a healthcare information system company. And I found this brand new field, and again, I had no healthcare background, and they hired me because I had a lot of the other skills, and I was tenacious. I wanted that job. They hired me, and I ended up working in that field for 9 years. I loved it. I loved the people. I loved the work that I did. And after working for that company for a while, I went off on my own and did consulting. I ended up subcontracting for them because they needed my skills. And I did really well. So that was my second major career. So when I hit about 50, I was about to hit 50, I had a personal and a business. I had a personal opportunity and a business challenge, a work challenge. I had fallen in love with a guy, and we decided that we were going to get married. But the hook was, he wanted me to move to Napa Valley. That was out in the sticks. I wasn't going to be able to do the kind of work that I did from that distance. In fact, my last consulting gig was a 3-hour drive down to Kaiser in Oakland. No, that wasn't going to work. So while I was still consulting, I started researching. I decided I wanted to do this. I was really sort of tired of being a road warrior, traveling nationally and internationally. And I started researching and looking at what was important to me and what skills I had and what I could do from a remote site in Napa Valley. And that's when I fell on the coaching field. I started training while I was still in the consulting field, and I got certified, and I started a new career. So 14 years later, I'm still doing that. I love it. And halfway through that, I started branching out and getting involved with other people in the field to learn and where we could together try to build tools for the bigger picture, for the bigger community. This was one of the tools that I worked on. And I'm still doing that today. And so I found a field that fits my values, my skills, and it also fits my financial needs for this point in my life. Hi, Carrie. So that's a little bit about me. So we're going to now move back to you. And there's two main successful elements that I found useful to me and that I found useful to the clients that I work with. Those two elements are planning and flexibility. When you're on a road trip on the road, when Carrie's out there with her motorcycle, she wants to know where she's going. She's got her Google map. She has an end destination in mind, and she might even have some snacks in the back of her motorcycle. And she might actually have a buddy to go along on that trip with her. So those are the same kind of elements that we need for any journey that we're taking, whether it's our life journey or whether it's changing jobs. So planning really reduces our uncertainties and helps us to make choices to create our best life. And we make our best choices when we're not in crisis. So doing it before you have to is ideal. Do it when you've got the time and the luxury to breathe, to think, to look at the options that you have. And flexibility is really a state of mind. And it's one of those key elements to positive aging. So it's not just about work, it's about your positive aging experience. We're all going to go there. We're already in that process. And we need to do that in order for us to be open to the changes that show up. Change is what we can always expect. Nothing stays static. And the second piece of flexibility is being able to be available to the opportunities that show up. So I want to find out what you hope to learn and leave here today with. So what are the ingredients to the map that you need to build for yourself, perhaps for your current job or for moving to the next stage of your life, the next work opportunity, or what you're calling retirement, how you're going to spend your time when you move into that next phase. So let's have a few of you just throw out your ideas about What elements do you need that you can think of right now, off the top of your head? What do you need on your map?
Money.
Money. You need money. Okay. What else? Time.
Companionship.
Companionship. Buddies. Health. Purpose. What else? Time. We've got that. Second time. Great. Family. So those are all elements that need to be included in our plan. And one other question that I want to ask you about is, where do you need to be flexible? Where do you think you need to be flexible? What's that place in you that you need to flex and grow in? This is about lifelong living and lifelong learning and flexibility and growth. Where?
I think you need patience and understand it's not going to happen tomorrow. And how many, it could be a year or 6 months, but try to get that plan, but try to be patient, I believe.
Patience. That's a really good point. This is a journey. They say it's a marathon. It's not a foot race. It's a marathon. And what you're doing today is going to affect your life until you leave this planet. Believe me, what you're doing now with looking at this work issue and what you're going to do with your life starting now. Any place else that you need to be flexible? Back here.
I just feel like the rules have changed. Like it takes me longer to recover from, like as I'm aging, I can't get away with, eating badly as much.
Yeah.
I can't drink as much anymore. Like it's like these rules have changed.
Yeah.
And now I'm just kind of catching up to them, and I have to be more aware of how to take care of myself health-wise, and
Yeah.
rules about how to take care of my health have changed.
Right. So it's really about being present with what the realities of your life are now and not operating out of that. When I was 20 years old, I ran 5 miles a day. Those don't fit any longer. So it's really important to be present with what the realities are in our lives right now. One more.
Ideas, attitudes, and the way of thinking.
Attitudes and the way of thinking.
Right. And being able to learn things like different approaches, learning from other people, especially about 401k, different ways of savings and things like that.
So being open-minded.
Right.
Great. So that you can look at new opportunities that happen and find tools and options that work for today. It's not the savings account your parents had. It's looking at what the options are for finances today. That's just an example. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. So as we weigh our options, it's really important to understand the relationship of what you're doing with your work world with the other parts of your life. And I just want you to take a look at this circle here, and I want you to circle for yourself which of these areas is really important for you to pay attention to for this next work transition that you're considering for yourself. So just circle any of these that apply for you. I just want to have a few of you throw out those circles. What are those areas of your life that are important for right now?
Paid work.
Paid work. Family relationships. Finances, key one, really finances. How about health?
Yeah.
If your health changes, it impacts everything in your life. Great. So be aware of that, because you can't operate in a vacuum. And in some cases, you have to deal with some of these other areas before you can deal with the work issue. If you have something critical going on in these areas, like finances, do you know how much you've got and what it will do for you in your retirement? If you don't know what your options are for work as you move forward. Okay. So we're going to do a little planning now, and I'm going to ask you to, on the sheet that you have in front of you, I'm going to ask you to start planning, which means getting it out of here, putting it on paper, and talking about it, taking action, physical action. So I'm going to give you about 3 minutes for you to jot down quickly the answers to these questions. Where are you today? What's your current work situation? What do you want in terms of work choices? What do you want? Okay, so let's hear from a couple of you of what you learned from this exercise of actually putting it down on paper. Did you learn anything new? Does anything stand out for you? What kind of challenges do you expect? What kind of trade-offs? Yes.
My husband's retired, so I've had an opportunity to kind of see what he's been going through, and it kind of hit me probably about a year, probably this year, that I really do have to make a plan, that I can't, I've talked to a couple of friends who've retired, and what are they doing with their lives? And I realized that I don't want to work, I don't want to continue working, but I am going to go ahead and do my photography thing. It's what I want to do, whether I make money or not is irrelevant. It's more just being able to, I know it's important to have a, not a plan, but to continue with a, what's the word I want to use? Routine. And that's what I'm learning for me, that I have to come up with a routine. I mean, the first couple of weeks, my main thing that I really want is I don't want that damn alarm clock going off anymore. That's like my biggest thing, just not having to get up at 6 o'clock at old dark 100, okay?
Great, thank you. So routine, that you know that's going to be a challenge for you. You need a routine and you need something that you're going to be working on, that you care about. One other person? Anything else? Did that trigger anything for anyone? Any trade-offs? Can you wait for the mic? We want to make sure we get these comments included on the tape.
But it feels like you are in charge. You were in charge of your career. You sort of made a decision. You sort of went into one direction, and now because of everybody else's bad planning, your work has changed completely. So even though we have just 3 or 5 more years, for those 3 or 5 years, how are you relevant? How can you bring your experience to the forefront? That sort of stuff. How do you make these 5 years? How do you set boundaries in a I don't know, all those things where as older, we have a lot of positives, but at the same time, it's almost like you're being, what some other people saying, being bombarded with, I don't know, it just seems very, I don't know, it's like you've made your plans, but everybody else has different plans, kind of.
Right. So it sounds like we got a combination here of challenge of how do you stay in the current environment and be able to keep your sanity and keep motivated and doing what you've been doing with all the changes that are going on, and that staying there is a trade-off for you, perhaps, of you want to keep working, you want to keep making the financial, bringing in the finances that you've been bringing in, and making the choice to stay there means that there's some trade-offs that you have to take. Okay. Thank you. One more.
Yeah, I want to add to what she was saying. So I'm in this right age group, but I don't feel like I'm done with my career yet. I feel like I have more to offer. But the opportunities here in Berkeley are not as plentiful as they were when I first started. So it's, I'm looking at jobs that are contract jobs. I have a career position. Do I give that up to do something more interesting? And that's just really hard because I know I can do better. I know I can be more fulfilled. I can maybe make more money as a contract, but you don't have security. It's a very high risk.
Right.
And I'm getting closer to retirement age.
Right.
So that's
great. So
that's what I'm
again, we've
facing.
got some trade-offs there. Great. Great.
Yeah, it depends. So it's
So many different situations.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And I think that you're voicing something that a lot of people experience. So thank you for bringing that to the table. Okay. So we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about looking at what are those needs and desires that work fulfills for us. What are those? I'm going to write a few of those down. What does work give you? What do you get from your work? Satisfaction. Okay. What else?
Feeling of accomplishment.
Accomplishment. A routine. Routine.
Service.
Community. Service. Contribution. Anything else?
Let's be honest and say money.
Money, of course. Okay. Network.
Knowledge.
Knowledge, okay.
Friends.
Benefits. Expertise. Okay. So we get a lot from our work. So I want you to take a look at, let me see what the time is here. I want you to take a look at the ones that are important for you, and I want you to look at what's the value under these that's important, like money. Is that about financial security, financial sufficiency? Service and contribution, making a difference? What are the values that are underneath that are important for you? Benefits, again, that's some kind of sufficiency and safety. And health, that relates to health, being able to have good health. So what I want to point out to you is that these needs that work fulfills for you add up to some of the values that you are paying attention to in your work. And that what you're saying here can be a part of your criteria for what you're looking for next. Okay? So if it's giving those things to you today, perhaps it needs to be a part of the next step that you take and the options that you consider. Got too many things in my hand right now. Okay. So I want to acknowledge that making decisions for your multidimensional life is not easy. It takes time. That was brought up before. It takes intention. You need to want to do it. And it takes focused attention, being present, making the time for it. I'm going to walk you through an 8-step process. And as I do this, as I said before, I want you to pay attention and acknowledge what you've already done for yourself. And look at where you need to go next in order to put together a plan for yourself. Okay. This was put together by primarily Carlene McKay, who is one of the main contributors to the chapter on work. And she has spent most of her life working on emerging workforce issues. She helps people develop, what she thinks is important is developing your competitive workforce value in a changing world, the 21st century that we're in. And for looking at the alternatives to work that exist today as opposed to what we've lived with in the past. Okay. So the first step in this process is let it go. What do you think you might need to let go of when you're dealing with the current job that you have with an employer? What do you need to let go of? The people, some of the people that have been important to you. What else might you need to let go of? Okay. So letting go of the job that you've been doing and what you think about that job, how you feel about that job. What else? You might need to let go of fear. That's a big one. We'll talk about that. Identity. Identity is connected with that job. Yeah.
People think that their identity is connected
Yeah.
to their job.
I am this project manager. I am this.
There's so much more
Right.
facets to who you are.
Okay. What else? Control. Ugh. Okay. So feeling like you know how it's all going to work and having control over that, having a sense of control. Okay. One more.
One thing is kind of let go of the idea that this is permanent, this is the right, the idea of job or life is basically
Okay. Yeah.
makes people change.
Okay. So letting go of that old industrial age concept where you start working with a company and you're going to retire from them and get the gold watch. That it's always going to be the same, that company's always going to be there. Okay, great. So I want to suggest to you that there may be a bigger definition of work that might help you deal with that letting go. But before I do, I want to let you know that what's most important about letting go is that you find some tools to help you do that. Find some tools that will allow you to stay present and to feel that you're available to be able to deal with the situations that you're in. It might be gratitude practices so that you can look at the positives that you have of what are you going to get if you do look at some options. So it's finding a way to deal with this emotional process, because this is clearly an emotional process that you're going through. Okay. So I'm going to give you a new definition. And this was coined by Jan Hively, another contributor to the Live Smart After 50 book, who contributed to this chapter. And this defines work in, I believe this is something we've all been doing all of our lives. We just haven't given ourselves credit for it, and society hasn't given us credit for it. Activity that serves you and your employers, or your clients, because that may be a new option for you, you and your family, and you and your community. From this perspective, this is a definition that's much more inclusive. It's a definition that can work for us not only now, but in the future as our physical abilities change and to our last breath. I know people that have, on their deathbed, have taught me things. That was their work. So opening up to this new definition, what do you see for yourself? Are there some new opportunities? When you think about your life from here till the end? Does this give you a better sense of self-concept? I'm not just my job, as somebody said before. I'm not just this title that I have. This is about how I contribute in many ways, whether it's for money or not. It's all work, and it's valid work. And I want to help you see that you can acknowledge yourself for it and recognize the opportunities that this allows you to find in your life. So letting go is a long-term process. There's forgiveness processes involved in some of that letting go too. Fred Luskin from Stanford's put together a really wonderful process and done a lot of writing about that. That's another tool that you could use. And I'm not a Stanford person, so don't worry about that. So it's an ongoing process. So the second step to the process, the strategic planning process, is internal analysis. That's where my clients and the people that I've worked with over this last 14 years get a lot of juice by going and finding out inside what's going on, what's important to them. It gives them a lot of motivation to be able to keep in action. It's important if you're feeling stuck. It's important if you're looking for new directions in your life. So I want you to, now on your piece of paper, we're going to do a little bit of planning with this. I want you to write down the new definition of work. After you've seen that new definition, what's the kind of work you're looking for next? Just write it down. It might be from that earlier step. It might be something a little different because of that new definition. So just write down what work you're looking for. So again, what's that telling you about what you value and what one of your key values is around making that change that needs to be kept in mind and addressed? What value showed up? Let's hear from a few of you. We talked about, money. That's financial security. How many of you had that? That shows up a lot. What else? What other values showed up? No values? No concerns? Fulfillment. Okay. Maybe meaning in your life. Fulfillment and meaning. That's a big one, too. Yeah.
I feel like I want to do more to share with the greater world at this point. Like whatever it is, other than just working for myself,
Okay.
which I think is great. I've been a responsible citizen, but whatever that means in terms of sharing, sharing and contributing in a larger sense is all I can articulate it. It's like there's a bigger picture and there's something different after we would leave the traditional workforce. It's like,
Okay, so finding your purpose in this next stage of life, how you can contribute and how you can do something meaningful. That's a big one. Not for everybody. Some people just want to go golf. But some people are looking for what are those imprints that I'm going to leave in the sand when I leave this planet? Okay, one more. Anyone else? Okay. So values is one of those internal areas of analysis, and you've just picked up one. There's lots of tools that you can use for this. The university has a lot of tools that are available through the Career Services Department. There are online tools. There are counseling sessions that you can go through. There's 3 pages of resources in the work chapter in the Live Smart After 50 book. There's online stuff you can find on the web. There's oodles of it. Skills and knowledge. Do you know what your transferable skills and knowledge are? If you don't, that's an area of internal analysis that you really need to go through. And again, there are tools on that, and I know the university offers, I think, a class on that, as well as having online tools and the counseling. And passions. Do you know what you're passionate about? How do you know you're passionate about something? How do you know that you're passionate about something? Can you do it for hours? Can you just get lost in it? Yeah. Maybe it's spreadsheets for you. You love analyzing those numbers. Or maybe it's, you love puzzles and you need to problem solve. Or maybe it's, you just love kids. And you want to do something with kids and you love being with your grandchildren. Whatever it is, getting in touch with what your passions are. And again, there are tools for that as well. And there's a chapter in the book that addresses that. It's called Living in 3D. I love the title because it's getting in touch with your passions, your purpose, and in some cases it may have a connection with spirituality. So doing these will really help you to understand what the criteria are that need to go into the next place that you want to work, whether that's paid or unpaid. So again, we're building criteria, and it starts here. It starts here inside before we even go out there. Okay. So, next step, we've done the internal stuff. The letting go, the understanding doing our internal analysis. The next step is looking at the market. And the marketplace is changing. We're no longer in the industrial economy that we used to be, that most of us grew up in. I grew up in a Rust Belt area, and it's where I lived. The house value today is the same value it was when my parents bought it. And I'm 64. You know what the economic conditions are that affect institutions like the university. You see what happens when technology changes happen and globalization happens where work can happen anywhere in the world. It doesn't have to happen here. And employers go after what they can, or businesses go after places where they can build and develop services and products in a way that's as economical as possible, and it may not be where it used to be. We also have demographic changes in terms of the people who are available for work and those people who are buying services, and the economic pressures, as I said before. So how do you keep aware of what those market needs are? How do you keep aware? Do you read the papers? How else do you keep aware?
The internet.
The internet. There's Google alerts you can set up for yourself. There's news feeds that you can read. There's blogs that are focused on these kinds of issues. It's important to keep yourself current with what's going on in the world. And find it from a diverse set of sources, because one may not be enough for you. Also, is there anything on the Wisdom Cafe that can help you? I'm not all that familiar with it. I know that you've got that, though. Okay. There may be discussions about economic issues within the university. Maybe looking for those kinds of discussions might add to your knowledge about what's the impact on the economic pressures on the university for the areas that you're concerned about. Okay. So with these demographic, technological, economic, and social global changes are both threats and opportunities. Opportunities for new ways to work, new jobs, new services, new products. And these are things that are important to know about so that you can keep your eye open and start thinking about how do these things affect or connect with my interests, my skills and knowledge, my passions, my values. You start looking at the intersections of those with what's going on in the outside world. You can find out about tomorrow's jobs by setting up a Google alert, use the words, or just go into Google search and put in tomorrow's jobs and quote. You'll get a lot of information. The US Bureau of Labor Statistics has a lot of information about today's jobs as well as emerging jobs, if you're looking for moving out of the university setting. But that might also give you some insights about what the impact is going to be on the university setting as well in the areas of education. Okay. So looking at your work options, now we're looking at going beyond the full-time job. There's part-time job options. Are those available here at the university? Okay. And they're out there in the full-time world too. Did I hear something? Part-time job options, right? There's being a subject matter expert, taking an expertise that you have if you're willing to leave the university. I don't know whether there are other places within the university you can take your subject matter expertise, but think about that. For instance, going to the Small Business Administration is a great place to go explore, to talk with them about your particular area of expertise and get some ideas about how you might be able to develop that into an opportunity for yourself if and when you're ready to leave the university setting. Temp jobs. Temp agencies are one of the best places to find new opportunities, part-time and full-time, for skilled labor as well as unskilled labor. So they're looking for all areas of expertise. My understanding is that Kelly is one of those organizations that really is looking for the mature worker. You can also get help from them on your marketing skills. You may do exploring these areas now while you're still at the university. This is about, we talked about this journey, and that it's going to take time for you to make these changes. So these are things that you could start exploring now. Free agent means doing what I did on my own as a healthcare consultant, but you have to have an entrepreneurial headset and be ready to do everything from buy the toilet paper to deal with the accounts payable and accounts receivable, and as well as provide the service or the product. franchises is another new direction. The largest number of people who are getting involved in franchises are over 50. And they're doing it for themselves as a way of investing some of their money into a service. Could be anything from a pool service to buying a McDonald's. There's lots of varieties there. There's a local organization called FranNet that has an assessment that they'll put you through if this is something you're considering to see whether you're a good candidate as a franchisee or not. Because their job is to do good matches, and they don't get paid unless there's good matches. And then if you're looking beyond paid work, there's a whole field of volunteerism and community involvement. I heard on TV last night, or a couple nights ago, a 73-year-old who ran for the Board of Education because she felt that education was really important in her community. You can jump in there wherever you want. You can do it while you're working, and then you can transition and get a bigger role when you're ready. And there are organizations that are looking for skills, not just answering the phone, but it's like a job search. The first place you go and knock on the door isn't necessarily going to work. It's going to take time for you to find a good match for yourself. Okay. And you could be a portfolio manager where you're doing a little bit of all of that, or choosing more than one of these. So while you're still here, you might be looking at an opportunity like having an Airbnb in your home or driving Uber. You know, there's lots of opportunities. Be creative. Okay. So challenges and barriers. We talked a little bit about this earlier. So the key to addressing challenges and barriers, you've talked about some of them already. Are there any more that you want to bring up on the table that you haven't heard so far that you're seeing? The key to dealing with them is to have a strategy for overcoming them, because they're absolutely going to show up. That fear is going to show up, and it won't show up once. It'll show up. You've probably got a pattern of how fear shows up in your life. There are techniques for dealing with that to stay present. You can only have one thought at a time. You can either have a fearful thought or you can have another thought that's more positive and that will keep you moving in action and give you a positive frame of mind. There's techniques for that. There's mindfulness practices. There's a technique that I want to mention that is available on the web that I've recently learned about. It's an ancient Buddhist practice called chode, which means literally cutting through. And it's about dealing with that fear, dealing with those voices in your head. It takes 5 minutes. I've done this and found it really effective. I read my notes about it before I came here today, because this isn't my main job of speaking. And so this isn't I get a little scared when I get in front of a crowd. So I did it for myself, and it's really effective. So I've got it on my resource page that is in your handouts. You'll have a web link for it. Age discrimination. Does anybody face that? Feel like you're facing it? Sure? Okay. Where's it start? It starts here. Starts about our own attitudes. We can't show up with our best face forward unless we deal with the ageism that we carry along with us. Oh, my face is not so pretty. I can't do that. It would be too hard. You know, what are all those messages that we give ourselves that are not constructive? We need to think about the positives, about what we've developed over our 50, 60, 70 years of life on this planet, what we've learned.
Entirely fair. I think we actually face age limitations in our workplace.
Absolutely, but it starts here. If we don't start showing up with as positive an attitude as possible, we're not going to be able to face what's out there. I'm not at all putting down that it doesn't exist out there. It does. So we need to start with what's inside, and look at what are our skills, our knowledge, look at our flexibility, our reliability. Those are the qualities that our employers are looking for. And I've read studies of employers who are hiring older adults, and those are the qualities that they see are valuable in the older adult. So if you start with that and you show up looking for a job, that's going to put you in a much more positive place than if you show up with a negative attitude about yourself. It shows. The other thing is to keep yourself current. Keep yourself current with technology. Keep yourself current with your image, being age appropriate. You have to make decisions for yourself, but it means not wearing that 1980s outfit when you walk into a job interview. You need to look at what's going to be relevant in the setting that you're going to. We have a question in the corner. Can we wait till we get the mic?
Oh, I just wanted to add something from a personal point of view. Things like discrimination, whether it's racial or age, it's very hard to prove, and it's very hard to, people don't talk about it. It's very personal, and for that reason, you can wear an outfit, you can try your best, but it's very personal. When it's with you, I know it's against the law, but proving it, it's very hard. And it doesn't matter. I've experienced it both ways, and it's one of the most hardest things to prove. So even if someone shares it with you, it's not always their fault, but it's very hard to prove.
I absolutely
and
agree
because
with
it's kind of on it's implicit bias. It's something that people experience on a daily basis. They pass it along, they leave, they go to another job, and they start all over again. So I think you're right. You need to get the tools to know how to deal with it, but it's something that happens to most of us every day.
I agree. I want to also say that it's important to understand what your rights are, and that you are aware of that as you go into employment situations. We can't get into the depth of this today, but I want to acknowledge that it is out there, and I want you to look at what do you have control over? What can you do to make this as positive as possible and open up your options? That's what I believe is where we have our control and where our strength is. So that's what I'm focusing on today. The last area that I want to mention here is educational gaps and missing skills. You need to look at, for the positions that you want to move into, whether it's paid or unpaid, what are the skills that are going to be needed? What's the education? And if you really want those positions, you need to look at what opportunities there are for you to get to fill those gaps. And there's lots of continuing education. You've got training opportunities through the university. You can look at how can you expand your own skills within your job, your current job. There's junior college opportunities. You can start a new certification program for a new field that you can complete in as little as 4 months or up to 2 years. So there are a lot of opportunities. I know there's some questions here, and unfortunately we're getting close on time. So if we have time at the end, we'll have questions, and if you'll bring that up. Okay. So what's your plan? One of the biggest problems that I see people having when they're trying to make a change is that, again, they keep it up here. You got to move from having it in your head. You got to start writing it down. How do you deal with a project at work? It's not all up here. It's you put together a project plan. You develop some interim milestones, and you use your scheduler to identify what you're going to do this week, what you need to do next week. This is your work. Nobody's going to do it for you. So you need to use the tools that you know work for you and use them for your own needs for finding this next step in your job, in your work life. So make sure that you create small steps so that you can feel like you're making progress. Find somebody who cares about what happens to you and talk with them about it, and let them know you want to check in with them regularly. You want to have them as your accountability, because it's easier. Sometimes it's easier to do it when somebody else is involved and it's not just for you. So build the tools in that will help you be successful. And putting together a plan doesn't mean that you can't change it. what you're going to find if you really work with a plan is that it's a place to start, and that you're going to have to adjust it as you go on, because as you start doing your exploration out there in the world, you're going to start finding out that you found out things that you didn't know, and it's going to change your direction in some cases. So you need to modify your plan as you get more information. That's the flexibility and the ability to modify and change as new information comes into you. Okay. The university should have by now online in the career development area an action planning template. I talked to Terry Moore, who said that this is being developed and that it should be on the website by this, when this conference started. So you can use that, or you can put together an Excel spreadsheet, whatever works for you. And use tools. Put it on, find a time during the week when you can sit down with yourself and look at what are the next steps that you need to take. And then make sure that you put on the calendar when you're going to do it. And when you finish that step, identify what the next step is so that you keep yourself moving forward.
Action planning template, what is that? So it's something in the...
It's going to be on the website for the career development department, yeah. I can't tell you any more specifically than that, but if you see someone on staff here today, you can ask and see where it might be found. So what's one of the most important ways that you think that you can find a job or get information that's important for your life? What's one of the most...
Community.
Say that again?
Community.
Community, networking, relationships. That's the most effective way to find jobs. There are other avenues as well, job boards and that kind of tool. But finding information through your networks is really important. And when you find the right person that you need to talk to at that organization or in that department, you need tools to be able to communicate to that person. That's what these marketing tools are about. Having a resume that's skill-based, that you can modify as you're applying for specific jobs. Does everybody have a LinkedIn profile? And if you don't, you need to have one. That's your online resume. And there are tools, there's YouTubes about how to do that so that it's really effective, where you have your title and it's got keywords in it that have the keywords that you're looking to connect with out in the world. That's where recruiters are going to look. That's where, and it's also an opportunity for you to connect with other people. There's also tools out on the web that tell you how to effectively use LinkedIn for getting inside departments, getting inside organizations to find people that might know the decision makers. Business cards. If you're looking in a new direction, you might create your own personal one. Be creative. I ran into a woman who's just recently retired, and she had a card that said Joy Coordinator. So, whatever it is, whether you're building towards a job in as a volunteer, or whether it's looking for a new position in project management, whatever it is, you could create your own business card. Elevator pitches. Everybody know what those are? Short sound bites, 30 seconds, with backup information of what you're going to say next. That's part of your branding statement. And then again, you can set up web pages for yourself, Facebook pages that give you an opportunity to talk more about what you have to offer and to share some of the things that you've done. Maybe there's some, and I think the Wisdom Cafe is a place where you can do that too. Is that true? Have you all looked at the Wisdom Cafe? Have you all signed up for it? That might be your next step if you're looking within the university. Okay. So I want you to pick where do you need to focus to increase your visibility? What's the one place, what's the next place you need to work on to increase your visibility for what you want to do next, whether it's looking for in the volunteer realm or looking for another part-time or full-time job?
I have a question though. Maybe my age shows it, but what is Vimeo?
Oh, Vimeo. Okay. Vimeo, I'm sorry, I didn't mention that. Thank you. Vimeo is something like YouTube where you can create little videos of yourself, and you can embed those in a Facebook page on the link you can put in your LinkedIn page. And having a visual that somebody can click on will increase their probability of actually going to your, spending time with you beyond reading about you. Okay, thank you for saying that. Great. And you can set up your own web page too. Okay, great. So again, I want to acknowledge that this takes time. It is a process. It takes time, intention, focused attention. And I want you now, pull out your calendar if you have it with you, and I want you to write down when you're going to work on one thing that came out of today's workshop. When are you going to do it? Within the next week. It needs to be short increments. It needs to be small chunks that you take steps on. So I want you to think about what are you going to do next, and when are you going to do it? And is there someone who you can call on as an accountability buddy that you can share what you're wanting to do around work? Whether it's finding a new job right now, finding a way for you to look at the opportunities within your existing job so that you can stay there? Or is it looking at options for yourself when you stop working for pay at the university? Okay. So, as I said, there's extensive resources available through the university, and I know there's staff here. There's the career, the coaching corner where you can go ask questions to find out where the resources are that you can use through the university. The Live Smart After 50 book is a really wonderful tool book for looking at not just work, but these other areas of your life that we've talked about that impact what you're going to do in your next job. The chapter on living in 3D around purpose, meaning, and legacy might be valuable to some of you. Dealing with finances, and the other about well-being and paying attention to your health and how that's really critical for you, and it's going to impact your work now and in the future. So I really highly recommend it as a resource. There's a number of, I'm going to have the book. The book's available for sale in the Hall of Fame lobby, and I'm going to be with Clara Chorley, the keynote speaker. We're both going to be signing, she'll be signing her book, and I'll be signing the Live Smart After 50 book from 1:30 to 2:40 today, if anyone's interested in that. And I'll be in the coach's corner at the chancellor's box from 2:55 to 4:05, so that 3 to 4 o'clock chunk of time if you'd like to speak individually to me. I have one other resource that I want to mention to you. I have a career assessment that I offer to my clients, which I'd be happy to share with you. It helps bring together those values, skills and knowledge and passions, looking at it through the lens of your past work so that you can develop criteria for where you're going next. And if anyone would like that assessment, leave me your business card with an email on it, and I'll be happy to send that to you. Okay. I've got a resource page here. One that I want, a couple of websites that I want to mention. The AARP Life Reimagined. Is anybody familiar with that? That's got lots of great resources in it. Connections to work issues, connections to life purpose, to volunteerism. Next Avenue, that's another really great one. That came out of a PBS special a number of years ago called Boomers and Beyond. I'm on their mailing list, and I just got a link yesterday to 10 great websites for finding part-time gigs. So that's the kind of information you get if you stay connected to some of these sites. And the third one is encore.org, which is wonderful if you're looking for finding purposeful activity after retirement from full-time work. Okay? So I want to thank you for your attention. We've got time for a couple of questions. Do we have time for any questions? We're right at 12:04. One question. Do you still have your question from before? Can we get the mic over here? And then if anybody wants to stay, if we're right at the end, so if anyone can't stay, you know that you can leave quietly. There are evaluations that we'd like you to fill out before you leave as well. Question?
It might seem strange asking a question about education.
We're still in session.
But if you have the skill, the passion, and the knowledge, but you lack that piece of paper, and so you know you're going to need to go get that education, and yet the financial burden of that is just not going to be in the cards at this stage of your life. What are some options? I mean, education costs.
Yeah, education costs. Without going into the details of your situation, you might want to look at whether there are ancillary kinds of work related to your interest that take less education, where maybe a certification might come into play that would allow you to get into that job and to learn more on the job. Okay? Thank you. Thank you for being here today. I'll stick around if anyone has questions for just a few moments, and then I will be in the coaches' corner in the chancellor's box.
You mentioned that there's going to be a week.
Thank you.